This is what the monitors look like out of the box, no calibration, colors, contrast, or brightness. The one on the left is the Pixio PX7, which has an IPS, and as you can see, it is very contrasty. The one on the right is an HP Omen, and it's the X27 model, and it houses a TN panel, but both of these are pretty color accurate. What we're going to do next is turn down the contrast so that way we can see the colors a little better. I turned down the contrast on the Pixio specifically because the contrast was actually blown out quite a bit. So the brightness remains about the same, and as you can see, they're both pretty accurate. Now, the one on the left is a nano IPS display capable of displaying about 98% of the DCI-P color gamut, and the one on the right is about a 90%. Now, in practice, after these are calibrated, there's not a whole lot of difference as I thought it was going to be. So I come from IPS family, and every single monitor I've had has always been IPS up until today, or when I received this monitor. Now, what I've noticed straight off the bat was that most of the color accuracy was pretty spot on. There's only a couple of colors that were more vivid and saturated in the IPS, which would be the Pixio. Now, this does not mean that they're the same, because the IPS clearly has an edge over vivid, saturated imagery. Now, it's hard to explain this over a video recording. Essentially, an IPS gives you the feeling of more saturation, vividness, and a little bit more of detail. It feels more immersive to a certain extent, but you also have to factor in the cost, and if the cost isn't a big deal to you, it would also be the backlight bleed that is also housed in many IPS models. Now, I've never really been too bothered by the backlight bleed, but it is an issue to consider. Now, when specifically talking about color accuracy or the fact that it's going to look like absolute crap, this is not the case. These new TN models are pretty damn spot on, and some of the other pictures that I'm going to be showing you are actually quite, I'd say, a good example of what that entails. But let's head on to the next couple of pictures, because I've got a couple of things to show you after we've calibrated this thing. So I calibrated the monitors based on both an ICC profile, which is implemented into the actual color management settings in your computer, and also by physically going on the back of the monitor and changing some things. So this is what it's supposed to look like after all the calibration is set. And again, every single monitor varies on the accuracy of the colors, but this is more or less what you're going to get based off just the ICC profiles and the back of your monitor or your on-screen menu monitor controls. So as you can see here, it's pretty damn close. The only difference being that in this particular case, it seems as though, and most of this is going to be revolving around the saturation and the blacks on the Pixio or on the IPS being a lot more prominent than the grays on the Omen. See, the biggest problem that the HP Omen has is not the colors, it's, for me at least, the blacks. So for me, the blacks look more like gray on the HP Omen rather than a true dark black. And this was actually quite jarring to me because I had never really experienced a monitor where I couldn't see absolutely nothing. In this particular case, you're seeing gray almost all the time. And it's not something that you can easily go in and change. It's actually pretty much unchangeable as far as the monitor goes. Now, is this a downside? I would say definitely not, at least for gaming purposes. If you're using this monitor for content creation, content viewing, or just general use, it's going to be very, very difficult to recommend outside of gaming. And the main reason for that is because this is a purebred gaming monitor. The blacks on this screen are almost non-existent. You should just get rid of that term or that color completely because it's going to be dark gray. And it's not something I mind at all in game because you can actually see your enemies quite easier that way. And I don't have any of the game cheat modes on where I can see black more clearly or whatnot. It's been all turned off. So just to prove a point, this is what it looks like when there's a black image or a gray image, when you have a mixture of both colors. And you can see there's actually quite a significant difference between the shadow on the left and the shadow on the right. So the Omen is very it doesn't like shadows. The Pixio Prime is actually pretty good when it comes to replicating just complete blacks. And you can also see that the center image with whatever delicious food is on there is a little bit more saturated on the Pixio, or at least a little bit more contrasty compared to the Omen. But again, this is just an example. So this is what it would look like after calibration with some of the colors, specifically with the browns and the reds here. Now, the one on the left, the IPS, is actually a lot more color dense, I would say. There's a lot more color to look at on the ground. There's a lot more color depth. And even with both of these monitors side by side, I would still agree that the Pixio looks a lot better. But it's up to the user to decide whether that's gonna deteriorate their experience with this monitor. I don't think it is, because it's still damn clear and there's a lot to look at here detail wise. It's really you just giving up the colors, or a certain extended range of colors is what I would say when it comes to grabbing this particular Omen monitor. I touched on it briefly before, but backlight bleed is annoying, and it's something I've had to deal with throughout every single time I've used an IPS monitor. Now, I didn't know how annoying it was until I was in a dark room and I didn't notice it, specifically with any type of black in the background. Now, here you can clearly see that there's a big difference when it comes to these two monitors in terms of blacks and grays, but in terms of shadows and blacks, right? Because we discussed how shadows are more or less visible on the Omen and more visible on the Pixio, but in this case, you're getting a wider range of colors that are taken from the exact same time that are not displayed on the Pixio. And I don't think this is a problem per se. I just think that this is something to consider, whether you're gaming in a dark room and you want to see that like very inky black. You should probably opt for either an IPS like the Pixio or another VA model, because this is what it's going to look like in the end. This was the last image I wanted to look at, so that way we could get more of a sense of the saturation in both of the monitors. So there's still a very clear saturation spike in the Pixio even after calibration, and I would say that it's actually quite fun to watch anything on the Pixio just because it's a lot more fun to look at with a lot of colors. It's not washed out at all. Not saying that the Omen is. I think that the Omen is more enjoyable when it comes to anything related to gaming, and the Pixio is a lot better just for having fun and just looking at either movies or content creation. Content viewing in general is sublime when it comes to the Pixio, or really any sort of the new nano IPS displays, such as the one LG's come out with. So if you're watching this, chances are that you're in the market for a new monitor. So you're deciding whether or not to go for the IPS or the TN. TN being a lot faster, a lot less input lag, and the IPS just having more praise for its colors. And I would say specifically for gaming, the TN is the way to go. And even just for regular content viewing on YouTube, Reddit, anywhere else, videos, it's pretty good still. It's really serviceable. I've been through at least 4 or 5 IPS monitors, and I can say that I wouldn't really be bothered if I was stuck with a TN panel for the rest of my life. Now, when it comes to the IPS, the big advantage that it has is showing those inky type of blue or blacks that are in the background, and showing that nice saturated details that come with an IPS display. It's a lot more vivid, it's a lot more rich, and at the end of the day, you're going to be almost mesmerized by how good the Nano IPS looks. So that's it. Wrapping it up. I think that overall, if you're gaming and you have a machine to power up 240 hertz at 1440p, the HP Omen X27 is the right monitor. However, if you're more in the market of something that looks really pretty, games really great on, and is also I'd say really color accurate or really just pretty looking in general, I would say go for the IPS. The margins of how pretty they are probably in the ballpark of around 10%, so it's not like a fail, like a 50 to 100%. You're not gonna really get that old TN technology that looks like absolute dog crap. So just a couple of things to keep in mind. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Peace.